You've at times tried to, perhaps harness some of our exuberance when it comes to Snap, particularly about the user growth. And this doesn't seem to have harnessed the exuberance on the share price today, but it is something that they're going to be measured against as time goes forward.
I mean, fundamentally, for this company, for this business to grow into the valuation it's at right now, it's going to have to be a better business. It's priced as if a lot of things are going to work, but when I looked, through the SEC filings, through the S1 statement, the amended S1 statements, one of the biggest issues was this rapid decline in user growth, and we've discussed it a little bit. But they've certainly acquired a lot of users, and these are rabid users, and they like to talk about the engagement, how much time users spend on the service, perhaps in part because the size of the user base isn't actually huge yet, right? It's half of Twitter's, it's a fraction of what Facebook's looking at. But maybe more importantly, the growth has slowed down dramatically. They added only 5 million users in the fourth quarter of last year. And even the quarter before, the user growth was also quite slow compared with historical numbers. In fact, going into the few quarters before that, there was an acceleration in growth rate. Yeah. Then the growth rate fell off dramatically. And that happens, it coincides exactly with the launch of Instagram stories. And that, to me, is the most disconcerting thing. The suggestion out there is, despite the really cool filters and other things that Snapchat has unique to Snapchat, Instagram's eating their lunch when it comes to doing this sort of storytelling on the mobile app. And you can see it, I think, in the user growth numbers.
Yeah, the copycat is a key concern. Looking at the Bloomberg, already deep diving into the analyst recommendations that we have on the Bloomberg for Snap, we have only three, but still, 2 of them are sell, 1 of them is a hold, not a single buy. And in fact, Pivotal Research saying this share could drop all the way down to $10. Jitendra, give us what the opportunities are for scale, though, because you've highlighted that, yes, analysts, we have seen the revenue perhaps grow, but perhaps the overall increase in user base slowing, but there is still potential for it to exceed its current form.
So if you actually look at their user growth issue, right, I mean, they're blaming it on the Android performance issues, but if you split it by geography, what you'll notice is the rest of the world, not Europe and not North America, is what showed the slowdown. So they just have to show over the next 2 quarters that they can be resilient, like in the face of increasing competition from Instagram, like Corey mentioned. If they whiff that numbers, I mean, there's a serious problem here.
Jitendra, do you think that what are the opportunities for growth, particularly outside of the age range? Gen X, millennials, people are now talking that parents are busy Snapchatting. Is that really the case? Will they look outside of the current age group?
I don't really think so, because this is a millennial-focused platform. If you look at their strategy overall over the last couple of years, it's been very millennial-focused, and they've shown that they get this audience better than most social networks that are out there. So I think sticking to their strengths is a good thing. Having said that, if you look at last couple of months, you'll see an uptick in 35-plus audience based on what Comscore data is showing. That's interesting. So maybe bringing in celebrities and followers that they have onto the platform to get some of this peripheral user base on could be one of the strategies.
I mean, they're already celebrities in their own way, Corey. We're looking at a picture of the social media age demographic breakdown. What's interesting is potentially they were already hitting saturation point when it comes to the United States. Others saying, look at the rest of the developed world for them to expand. They have been looking at their international reach.
Yeah, so internationally the company's been growing, but growing at considerable expense. It appears that the service either has become suddenly expensive to provide for U.S. users, or the international users just cost a lot more for them to provide for. So while the international growth might offer some opportunity for them, it's also coming at a great expense. This is a business that has had negative gross margins for every quarter of its existence except for the last 6 months. And so on a trailing basis, you've got negative gross margins. As I mentioned earlier on Bloomberg Radio, there are 552 stocks out there with over $10 billion market cap. Only Snapchat and National Oilwell Varco have negative gross margins. That's just not a business. The very essence of any business, whether you're making oil wells or selling widgets or selling Snapchats, is you got to sell something for more than it costs. These guys are unable to do that.
And Jitendra, when we look at your Bloomberg intelligence analysis, you have dug into looking at the market capitalization in terms of the ratio of the users that they have, the user base they have, and they say their market cap value per daily active user is significantly less than Facebook and Twitter was.
Yes, that's one way of looking at it, but actually if you look at the big picture and compare to all the IPOs, all the key IPOs that happened over the last decade, Snapchat's coming out right at the top of most of them. And with those outsized valuation comes outsized expectations. So revenue growth, I don't feel that should be a worry, to be honest, because they've just started monetizing it. But user growth, if they show any weakness, especially given Instagram's ramp, that would be bad news for the company.
Jitendra, it's interesting. We just had Sarah Fryer on saying that actually it's a bit like when Apple went into music streaming, Spotify's own business model was sort of vindicated to a certain extent. Do we think the fact that perhaps Facebook is doing everything they can to copy Snap because they couldn't buy it, does that actually vindicate it to advertisers that this is where you want to be actually splashing your cash?
Yeah, see, that's why it's a wait-and-see story, right? Like, initially, you'll have the experimental budgets that advertisers spend on everybody but Google and Facebook distributed to Snapchat as well, and that's where their revenue growth initially will come from. But longer term, if they prove that they can hold the engagement among this core millennial group that they have, and they continue to make it easier for marketeers to advertise on their platform, then their revenue can scale. So it's really a show-me story at this point.